The Springs Radio Real Estate Show. I'm Cheryl Garlock with Colorado Front Range Properties, and you know this is a show all about education and information about residential real estate, and that means that I always bring in great guests such as Daryl Harrison with Stewart Title to help us unravel the mysteries of real estate. And welcome to the show, Daryl.
Thank you again, Cheryl.
Now, we do know that we get a lot of people who would call real estate mysterious.
It is.
It is very mysterious there.
Different every day.
Different every day. Now, you guys, I want you to really focus in here on what Daryl is saying here, because, you know, there are a lot of elements to doing a real estate transaction, from, you know, finding the home, contracting the home, getting an inspection. Well, let's not forget getting a loan. But that one little area that is often so overlooked by everybody really is title. It's just kind of a thing that sort of happens and nobody really gives it too much thought. But on all honesty, it's a very important element. In fact, it is probably the single most important element. And I'm not saying that just because Daryl's in the title business, but without title and ownership, which conveys ownership, you know, you don't have a deal.
Without the title insurance policies that we permit, allow to have happen here in the United States, we would not have a free market real estate.
No, we wouldn't there at all. But anyway, and so let's talk a little bit about what title insurance is, and let's specifically focus in on why you as a buyer need to really be concerned about picking your own title company for your transaction. Daryl, you can enlighten us the best on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you purchase a title insurance policy, it is an insurance policy. We're an insurance company, and I think that just gets overlooked in the closing, that there's a policy being issued.
It does. It does get overlooked at the closing, because there is a policy that is being issued there. Because when it gets overlooked at the closing, because, oh, you're all sitting at the table and you're sitting there signing papers, and one guy's giving you keys and the other one's giving them money,
right.
You know, generally speaking. But between all of that is a policy.
Correct.
And, you know, one of the biggest reasons why I think a buyer should take charge of selecting the title insurance company, especially for the policy and to conduct the closing, is because of claims.
Correct. Now, I can give you a quick story, Cheryl.
Please do.
Okay. And that is, we just completed a closing just this past week, where the current owner of the property was trying to sell to a new buyer.
Mm-hmm.
And in that transaction, doing the title search, we discovered they didn't own the entire piece of property. The seller who sold it to the current owner did not have the right to sell part of the property that the owner bought.
Weird. And you know, you guys, you gotta understand something about these things. These searches that the title company's talking about, how many years do they generally go back?
Oh, we go back to patent on most of them, unless it's a current subdivision. But even then, we'll have a base file that goes all the way back to patent. And that is when the land was patented from the U.S. government to the state of Colorado.
We're talking probably, what, 1800s?
Late 1800s.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So, you know, you have this situation here. So now what is the buyer stuck with?
The buyer stuck with an unmarketable property.
Wow. That means that if they really want to sell, they're stuck. They can't. And yet, guess what? They get to make those things called payments on them.
That's correct.
They have little to no control because they didn't get the homework done that they needed to have done when they bought the property in the first place as the buyer.
Now, yeah, and as the buyer, they did not choose the title company. It was chosen by the seller in this transaction. And you know, that's why I think it's very important that the buyer concerns himself with what policy they are receiving.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And speaking of that we have had a recent change in the last, I don't know, year or two now, where the Real Estate Commission, when they put our forms together, does allow the buyer to select the title company. You know, decide the title company and the policy, or who's going to be issuing the insurance, isn't that right?
That's correct.
And you want to go ahead and do that there. And, you know, while I believe that provision says, well, the buyer can pay for it,
right,
it's really, frankly, you guys, all part of negotiation.
Absolutely.
You know, you and I were talking here just before the show here about how, the seller still pays a buyer's agent's fee.
They pay the buyer's agent fee. A lot of times they're negotiated that they pay a big chunk of the new lender's fees. They pay a lot of fees in a transaction for the buyer.
And you know what? And yet, you know, we get a few agents that get a wild hair up their rear end, if you'll pardon my French, you guys, but that's the truth here. That is the bottom truth here. And they think that because they're representing the seller, they should go ahead and pick this entity. You know, I'm like every other agent there. I'll pick that too if somebody else doesn't do it. But if a buyer comes along to me and says, hey, I want this company here, then I have to respect that, because they're living with the insurance policy.
Yeah, I think the listing agent has every right to recommend the title company, and that's a choice that's provided for the buyer if they choose that. But I think that they need to at least educate themselves to the fact that they have a choice, and that's what's important.
And you know, I don't really know that many real estate agents, if they're doing their own deal, would not pick their own insurance company for their own site if they're the buyers of it. So I think it's really essential that buyers really get a better understanding of what title insurance involves and the policy and the protections it affords, because clearly in your story there, that was an issue.
It's important to know the insurance company behind the policy as well as everything else.
You know, now you mentioned that. There's a thing as, let's say, there's an agency, and then there's the insurance company itself. Is that correct? They're two different underwriters?
There's underwritten title companies, there's underwriters, and there's title agents. There's a spectrum of different businesses.
Yeah. And you guys, I bring this up because in our wonderful legalese world of real estate practice here, we have an organization, or really it's not, we do have an organization called the CFPB, Consumer Fraud Protection Bureau, which somewhat oversees the Real Estate Settlements Procedures Act, or we call it RESPA.
Correct.
And RESPA does make these required disclosures here, but sometimes the rules, you might say, just go over the tops of the heads of a lot of practitioners in real estate. And that can be to your detriment.
Correct.
So you guys, really, if you want to know more about understanding title insurance, I know that Daryl would welcome a phone call. Daryl, please tell everyone your number, please.
Go ahead and call our main office number, 578-1100 with a 719 area code.
Absolutely. Ask for Daryl Harrison. But you know what, you guys, I'm ready to talk to them about properties. We've got some great properties to share with you guys here. And if you want to know how to find the perfect home with the accurate information, you better stay tuned for more from the Springs Radio Real Estate Show. We will be right back with more.